Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show Meet the Global Leader. This is an initiative by School of Entrepreneurship Development. Under this initiative, we invite many skilled professionals, leaders, consultants, and entrepreneurs. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome today's guest, a visionary social entrepreneur, Bernd Rosenbichler.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for inviting me.
Sir, my first question to you is, we always stay curious about the people who are successful in the particular field they are working in. We like to know about how's their childhood, where they have completed their schooling from. So, will you please share your childhood memories or where you have completed your education?
Okay. Basically, I'm sitting now. Sorry, I'm sitting now in Germany, in Munich, but I'm not German. I come from Austria, which is a small country next to Germany. So there I spent my childhood. I basically made all the basic schools there, and I went to university there. So I studied business administration in Vienna. I made a stop in the US for an exchange program where I pretty much did the same. I was focusing there on marketing and advertising. And that's where I kind of spent most of my educational time in Austria. And like I said, a little bit in the US. And basically the only thing that was maybe remarkable, I would say, in that time was that I think during my studies I had about 16 jobs that I did aside from studying. So I was kind of busy and literally doing everything that I could in order to get some experience and get some money. And that's kind of describing the scope of activities I did there. So I did internships in automotive, in consulting, which kind of helped me, to learn and progress. And I was working as a freight loading person on the airport as well, which just brought some money. So I tried to get a good mix of things that just make sure that I have some living and can pay for my studies, and to make things that really bring me forward in terms of what I want to do. And I think that was something that helped me during that time, that even during my studies, I had quite a good feeling or view on the things that were important to me and the things that I kind of wanted to make later on. So quite early for me, it was somehow clear I wanted to go into automotive and or maybe consulting. So these were the two areas that I kind of took a closer look at and tried to get some insights there, some experiences there, in order to be able to make a good judgment after my studies where to start my career. So looking back now, almost 20 years or whatever, I think that was the right way to do it, to firstly clear your mind. What's interesting for me, what do I like? And if you're not sure, get some experience, take a look, try to get some insights. And these insights could be literally anything. It doesn't have to be the best company in the world. It doesn't have to be the best paid job in the world. That's not relevant, especially during your studies. I think you're very much in the investment time. You're investing into your future. You're investing into what you're going to do later. So that should be the focus, to get experiences that are relevant, that you're interested in, and don't look too much at any other things that might not be so relevant at that point in time. So that's kind of a brief overview on where I'm coming from and what I studied, what I did, and basically looking back, what from my point of view was really relevant at this time or at this stage of my development, so to say. And coming from that, it was if I may, I jump on to my kind of professional start and how things progressed from there. I think I was very soon at the point that I wanted to go into automotive, and so pretty early when I came towards the end of my studies, I already had some quite good contacts into automotive, but I really approached literally all the companies that were relevant for me or that I wanted to work for. Most of them were in Germany. So most of the automotive OEMs had their headquarters in Germany. So I simply started applying. And fortunately, I got quite a lot of interviews or invitations for interviews. And I went there, and I also, fortunately enough, I had some offers to choose from. And what's maybe remarkable there, at least for those being in the industry or being a little bit close to automotive, I had offers from BMW and Ford. And most of the people said, you have to go to BMW. It's the, premium brand, more attractive. But I took the Ford offer. And that had a very specific reason and maybe gives another insight on how I was thinking there, or at least what helped me at this point in time. Ford at this time, they had a quite good global organization. It was called the Premier Automotive Group, where they kind of clustered all the premium automotive brands. Their headquarters was in London, and another one was in California. They had attractive brands. They had extreme ambitions, and I loved their idea. As simple as that. I loved the brands that were in there. I loved the idea. Mr. Reitzle, who was the head of it, I thought he was a good manager. So I thought I want to get there. And to get there, starting with Ford in Germany seemed to be an option because they offered an international trainee program. And they said, well, after you did your kind of trainee program in Germany, it could be a possibility to get there. And that was enough for me to know that I would have the chance, to get there, like the second step after the first step. That's many times if you have to take decisions, it's not only important to decide for the next step, but also to consider, okay, what's coming after that, So that's what I did there. I said, well, my midterm target is to get into that group. So I do the first step here, and then hopefully I can go for the next step. And that's what I did then. I started out in Cologne, in Germany, at Ford. Had a very good trainee program, so I got to know really the whole organization. This was really a good first step in the industry because I didn't directly start with one function, but I had the chance for, I think it was half a year, to really travel to the organization. So I could dive into each and everything they were doing. I could learn about their technical development, about their marketing and sales, how finance works. So it was extremely valuable because even before I started really with working, I had the opportunity to get to understand the organization, the processes, how things are kind of working in that environment. And that on an international level. So we had a lot to do with the UK and US and some other markets. And I think that was an excellent step into that direction. And it really helped me a lot afterwards because whenever I came into certain new situations, I always could look back to like these first experiences of understanding your organization. And that was helpful. So that's kind of where the journey started, but it wasn't a very long journey. For a very simple reason that after, I think it was a year and a half, Ford got into kind of financial troubles and they stopped all international programs. And that was for me a point where I had to take a decision, because I took the decision to go there based on like the second step. And that second step suddenly didn't seem to be possible anymore. So I said, well, the reason why I came here is now gone. it was a good time. I learned a lot, but obviously my kind of future perspective changed now. And so I took a very simple decision and say, well, then let's move on and see if I find another opportunity at another OEM. And I applied for Audi at that time, for a very simple reason, because Audi was at this time, a brand which was kind of old-fashioned and perception wasn't very good. But you could feel that they have a tremendous momentum and that they were changing. They were doing a lot, looking towards the future, repositioning their brand. And that looked, at least from the outside, quite attractive. So I applied there. And fortunately enough, I got a job, or I got the opportunity to enter into the organization. And you wouldn't believe it today, but at this time, I came into a department which was called New Media. So, it's been now 20 years ago. So at this time, we just started with internet. You had your first web pages as organization, first configurators, and CRM was starting, and data suddenly got relevant. So that was a pretty cool and exciting department to start with, because I had a combination of two things: an organization under high steam and highly motivated, extreme ambitious targets, and a kind of new discipline, new media, which was highly relevant as well. So you had a kind of double dynamics, a fast-moving organization plus a fast-moving topic. And that was a very, very nice step into that organization, as it was so ambitious and obviously didn't yet have the structures and the people to really kind of cater for all these ambitions. It simply meant that everybody had, maybe worked twice as much as anywhere else, but you also had the freedom to do that. Because it wasn't about, follow a certain process which we've been living for 20 years, or stabilize our activities. No, it was about, we need to grow, we need new ideas, we need to catch up with our competition. So it was a time where even though I only had 3 years of work experience, I had a tremendous amount of freedom, of possibilities, of situations where I could decide, and that again really, I think, was a steep learning curve for myself, because obviously if you can decide, you also can make mistakes. And fortunately, it was an environment where everybody accepted this and knew that, because the worst thing we could have done was simply doing nothing. And so it was, I think, for my kind of the development of self-confidence, that you're at a very young age. I was way under 30, getting responsibility, being part of a kind of build-up of an organization, dipping into new fields that you haven't been before, is something where you can, I think, grow a lot. And I hope, or I think in my case, that really happened there. And from there, I kind of moved on into one area that was always very close to my heart, because obviously, maybe you can take that as advice as well. If you want something, go for it, but don't be, or sometimes you can also think around corners. Let's put it like this. And I'm coming back to, you always need to have a certain mid to long term idea what you want. It's not about saying I want exactly that. I mean, if you know that, fantastic, but it's enough to say that's an area that I would be interested in. And if you're not getting directly there, don't worry. Take take one corner more. And like I explained it for Ford, it was pretty much the same for Audi as well, because what always was close to my heart was portfolio strategy, product strategy. I wanted, to be there where an organization decides about products. What are we doing in the future? What will be in the market in 10 years' time? What is our vision if it comes to products and stuff like that. That was always something which I really wanted to do. And when I had the chance to enter the Audi organization, it wasn't like this function directly, but it was a function like I described, which was fantastic at this time, which gave me the opportunity to learn, and very important, to be much closer to those people who decide who can get into this strategic part. So I took the opportunity and fortunately got into that part of product strategy. And that's kind of where I really started doing the things that were the closest to my heart. You know, talking with literally the whole organization, technical development and strategy departments and finance about the future of the product. And basically in automotive, it was always the case that like the product's the most important. So if you mess that up, then you're really in trouble as a company, because as a rough background, at this time at least, it was 7 years it took to develop a new product. It cost billions of euro or dollars to make such a development. So if that's not successful, you're really in deep trouble. So it was kind of really the heart of the organization where you could work. And that's where I spent a couple of years. And you tell me if I'm too long, right?
No, it's fine. We want to know about your experience in Audi, BMW, and Ford.
Okay, cool. Okay. Because after that, and I try to speed up a little bit, but it's all quite interesting stations, and I try to get the core out of it. I had a situation where and maybe that's relevant because it can encourage you as well. We had at this time, every board member had an assistant. So the whatever board member for marketing, for finance, for HR, they all had an assistant, and this was a very, very attractive position, because obviously you were in the middle of decision making and managing a company. You got a brilliant overview how the system works. You could dive into literally every topic that was relevant for an organization, and you were working with people who made it already, because you were working with the board members, so they were kind of on top of the organization, and these were most of the time people you could learn a lot from. And I can't even tell how I got into the kind of pool of potential applicants for this position. And up to this time, I didn't have any touch points to the board members. It was a very strange world for me. So I knew that the other candidates were people who've been very close to the board member. So I didn't really see my chances. And what that meant for me was, if you don't have any chance, what do you have to lose?
Right.
And that's basically the attitude how I went into my interview with the board member. I said, well, there must be a reason why they consider me, and the reason could be because I am who I am, how I am, what I am. So if I go into that interview, why should I play any different role than just being myself, you know? And that really gave me a lot of self-confidence and relaxed me, because I simply enjoyed the meeting with him, with the board member. It was a great discussion, and I wasn't fearful, but I was just myself, you know. And I think that might have been the reason, because I was very authentic and didn't play anything or you know, say 50 times how much I would love to be here or stuff like that. I was just talking about myself, who I am, what my targets are, where I see things that we need to do and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, I got the position and held it for 2 years, which again was learning at its best, because there I really got the kind of full picture of the industry, of a board member working, board members deciding, working with supervisory board, politics, all the things that at some point in time will kind of be on your way if you're in a big organization. And I think it was a successful time because I'm still today I'm in touch with this board member. So we really also had a very nice and good personal relationship, and that maybe was one of the best professional experiences in my life. And after that, and this was equally cool, I got an assignment in Dubai, so because at this time Audi was expanding a lot, and we didn't have a kind of sales organization yet for the whole Near and Middle East. So they set up an office there, which was responsible for the whole region. So we had 13 countries that we were coordinating there, and was responsible for marketing and PR. And that was my first leadership experience, and my first international work experience. And that was, yeah, it was a tough one, because you're coming from Germany, and obviously you had a lot of international contacts, but you've never been really kind of a leader in an international team. So I had in my team people from Egypt, from England, from the region there, from Sweden, from Lebanon. So a quite diverse community. And it was the first time ever that I kind of started working with people. And I think what I started learning there, and what was basically, yeah, true for my whole leadership experience then over the following years, was one of the most important things is trusting people and relying on the skills of people and giving them freedom. And I've seen many leaders who think they are the best experts, who need to tell their people whatever they need to do, who kind of need to be after them and see if they are working, stuff like that. That for me always seemed to be highly inefficient, because I think most of the people you find in corporations, they are there for a certain reason. They have a good education, they have a good attitude, they are ambitious, they had to go through application processes, and most of the time are very motivated to really get things moving. And my understanding of a leader is to unleash the power of the people and not to limit it. So if you at least start with this attitude and say, I trust and rely on my team, I trust and rely on their skills. I know that I'm not the best, whatever, best knower or in any field. You can never be, the bigger the team or the department gets that you're leading, you're not going to be the one who knows everything. And that's not the point. You need to understand, where you want to go. You need to understand what you need for that way. And you need to understand where you have your deficits, which people can fill the deficits, what strengths the people have, and then find the right mixture and then develop people. If you see there is certain deficit, develop people to a point that they really can bring in all their skills. And if you find a lack of skill, being it in yourself or in your team, that's a management task to make sure that you get somebody who has these skills, and then let people do their job, give them the freedom to really, bring in whatever they can bring in. Because I think that's at the end of the day, the best motivation that you can have. And I experienced that a lot. Whenever I had the freedom to move, whenever I had an environment that could give me a certain direction that we wanted to go, and then we simply started running together, this was always the time when we got the best results. And I think that was true for Dubai as well. So I was there for 3 years, and it was the boom time of Audi. So Audi was growing worldwide. We had tremendous growth rates in the region. We could develop the brand. We had budget. So it was say a good setup and a frame that made working easy. But of course, we still had to push, and our target was always to catch up with BMW and Mercedes. So there was a way to go. But I think we were successful, and also working with international teams. I mean, one thing, and that's maybe true for every situation in life, and what I really learned through my professional career, and which is maybe even more important in what I'm doing today, is that you, at a certain extent, you need to be able to change perspectives. That's extremely important for me, because if you look at what could changing perspective mean, then you come very, very quickly to the point that it has an impact on almost every part of your life. And this is maybe even more true in a professional environment. Take some examples. If you're talking to employees, if you're doing negotiations, if you're developing a strategy, if you're thinking about innovation, what helps you there? Understanding the position of your employee. Even more important if you're in an international context. I'm Austrian. I have no idea how somebody from Libya or Lebanon or wherever thinks. So I need to understand it first in order to adapt my communication in a way that this person also understands what I'm talking about and receives the same message that I want to send. If I'm negotiating with somebody, I need to change my perspective to this position in order to understand the targets these people might have. So I can adapt to it and say, okay, that's what they want. So I need maybe this route to get there. If I'm thinking strategy, I need to be able to change my perspective into maybe a future customer expectation and say, okay, what might they expect from us as a company, from our products, and then get it into my development. Same is true for innovation. So that was really something which helped me a lot. In this assignment later on, when I went to China, it was exactly the same there. I came to China, had a team of 60 people. One of them was German, 59 were Chinese. I had no understanding of Chinese culture, of Chinese way of deciding. So it was extremely important for me always to at least try to understand their perspective, their targets, their way of deciding. And after a while, you start understanding that. If you practice it a lot, it's almost an automatism, and it helps you. And it really, really helps to an extent that even in China, I think I was quite successful in achieving a lot. I was only there for 1 year, but we achieved tremendous things because we trusted each other to a certain extent. We understood each other's position, and we stopped at some point playing tricks and took decisions together. And the beauty of, I think that's typical for Asia, once you have a decision, things are moving quite fast. So that's different to what I learned in Germany. Even if you have a decision, things are still not very fast. And that's a point. If you understand that, you can be pretty efficient, because then okay, I just need to focus on getting a decision and make things right. And after that, things are moving very fast. So that for me was one of the maybe most important learnings. The sooner you are able to understand either the person you're talking to or the topic that you're talking to, not only from your angle, not only from what do I want, but firstly paint this full picture. What are the stakeholders? What are the interests? What are the ways of thinking? The earlier you learn that, I think the sooner you can really take a lot of profit out of this kind of behavior. And it's been I met many people who were in very, very important positions. They told the same stories. They said, if I'm going to a supervisory board meeting, I get up at 2 a.m. and I go exactly through each and every supervisory board member and try to anticipate what do they want and what do they think. And that's how I kind of prepare my strategy to achieve the targets that I want to achieve. So that's kind of one of the learnings that worked for me, and that I could apply in Dubai and in China during my time there. And after that, I went back to Germany, and then I took basically over where I've been working a couple of years before, like the whole product portfolio strategy and brand strategy and market research and innovation strategy. So I kind of were there where I always wanted to be, to have really impact at that point, not only as an employee, but then as a responsible manager for that. And yeah, hopefully give the Audi organization, I was still with Audi, some valuable input, and a lot of products that you're seeing today on the streets kind of came into existence during that time. So that's then something even today I'm still proud of. If I'm seeing whatever in Audi Q8, that one was kind of developed, or that was our idea, and we fought a lot for it that we got it. So that's then, you can always have impact no matter what you're doing. But obviously that was then the most impact during my working time, I guess I had, when I kind of was in the leading role in an area that I knew, that I loved, and where I really had a lot of passion for doing it. So that's the Audi time. And then the last step maybe, and then I went to BMW. That was the first time ever that I got an offer from another company, because I honestly never cared about other companies. I was happy with what I'm doing, and I never had to do with headhunters, so I wasn't really experienced. And at some point they approached me, and when I learned this was BMW, I was really shocked, because I was so loyal that I couldn't imagine getting there. But I was interested then at least to learn what they want from me, and I have to say that the kind of personal conversations that I had were really impressive, and I got more and more curious, and I then decided to take the risk and go there, and that's where I left where I spent the last 6 years, and was in the strategy department, being responsible for brand portfolio strategy, market research, long-term planning, economics. So kind of very strategic, setting the ground for BMW's long-term planning, I would say. So basically, we try to describe the world like 10 years ahead, and make recommendations for BMW how to kind of position as a company in order to be successful in that time. And that's where my automotive story ended. But maybe you have some questions now for my professional career before I move to that.
Yes, so you're talking about your experience in the automotive industry, but you're also a social entrepreneur. Would you share the experience of that journey?
Yeah. It was 2 years ago, basically, 10 years from today. My first son was born. He's called Ben, and he was, I think after 4 years, he was diagnosed with a rare disease. We found out because his vision was very weak, so he literally was blind, but we didn't know what it was. So we've been searching for a couple of years, and I think it was after 4.5 years we got the diagnosis that it was a rare disease. And this is a tough call, first of all, but I think whenever you have, and that's true for private as it is true for any professional situation as well. Whatever situation you have, and whenever you get into a situation where you're really, being challenged, as a person, as a decider, whatever, I think you should always try to get your look into the future as soon as you can, and look at the chances that you have, and not at the challenges that are there, or never give up. The situation is as it is, and if you can't change it, make the best out of it. And we developed such an attitude quite quickly. So Ben was growing up. He's blind. He's almost dumb, and a couple of other problems. But he developed to be one of the happiest persons I know. He talks about himself as being the luckiest child in the world. So that was something. I was still working. I was making my career. I was in top management at BMW. So everything was fine. But I had a little boy with a super rare disease, which nobody could heal. There wasn't any chance. People didn't even know about it. So we couldn't do anything. And I was watching this little boy growing up, being so lucky, being so life appreciating, but I couldn't do anything. And 2 years ago, when I had to decide about my next job, I started asking myself, is it right, to continue just looking at yourself, optimizing yourself after you did that for 25 years and accept that nobody helps your child? And that brought me to the point that I said, no, no, it's enough now. I want to do something. And this was a quite unique decision. I think not so many people took so far to leave such an organization, because BMW is a brilliant company. From such a position without any backup, I really quit my job and left and say, let's do something. But it was, for me, the absolute, and still is today, the absolutely right decision, because if you always have the, and this is true for me, for everybody. It's always that you have kind of two ways to behave if there's something you do not agree on. One is accept it and complain about it, and the other thing is do something. And it's always your own decision, because the easiest thing is to say, well, it's all the others, to blame for, and nobody does something. That's easy. And at the end of the day, you can always do something. It's not the question about how much you achieve for me. The question is, did you do something? And I can really strongly recommend to each and everybody, never make yourself, in whatever decision you are in, life too easy by saying it's the others, it's the environment, it's the whatever situation I'm in, it's the government, it's, I don't know, there's so many reasons out there that you can find why certain things do not work the way you want it. At the end of the day, just try to change it. Just try to do something. Just try it. If it doesn't work, at least you can say, I tried, and now I know why it didn't work. Then again, you can start changing that, what kind of held you back in the first step. But it's always worth trying. And now looking back the last 2 years, and I really changed from corporate into being self-employed. These are obviously totally different worlds, because I'm now in non-profit. I set up, in the meantime, 3 companies to get donations, to support research, to create awareness. I'm selling pictures of my son to support my activities. I'm set up a patient organization now. I'm doing a lot of work in advisory boards. I'm sitting in advisory boards for Pfizer, for other companies, for universities. I'm doing presentation on universities and really doing a lot. But I need to do it, because the biggest difference between corporate and being self-employed is very simple. In corporate, things are moving. If you're there or not, they are moving. The system compensates, and that's why these systems are set up like this. Individual skills, individuals, quite fast. So if somebody leaves, another one comes. But the system will run. The system will work. If you're self-employed, you are the system. So you have to do something in order to make things happen.
Right.
And that's extremely satisfying, because the direct feeling of your input and an output, however that looks like, is something which is, like I said, extremely satisfying. But it's a lot of work, it's a lot of effort. And for me, it's really something very special and great that I can now talk about both worlds and made experiences in both worlds, and maybe also give recommendations, what type of person should be in which one of these two concepts. But I can, at the end of the day, I can recommend both. It always depends on your own targets, skills. Some people like security and a big organization that's kind of supporting them, which is perfectly fine, which I enjoyed for many years. Others like the freedom of creating things the way they want. So that's where I'm kind of working on now. And I call it social entrepreneur because so far I don't make any money out of it. I'm really investing because I want to help not only my son or the disease of my son, but many other peoples as well. So I'm working a lot in health, doing also startup consulting, and trying to support all those who have a similar mindset and want to do something not only for themselves but for others as well. I make a quick break because I think we're running out of time, right?
No, I have just 2 questions left. We
Yeah.
already answered of the questions by yourself. Um, have you ever faced any obstacles or challenges during this entire journey of yours, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah. Basically a lot. Or you always coming to obstacles, and maybe I give you two answers. That wasn't a direct obstacle for me, but I very often had with my employees discussions about, we wanted to change whatever X, Y, Z, but we can't because the system doesn't allow or it doesn't work. And whenever I had these kind of situations or discussions, I asked them, okay, what is it specifically? Did you try? And it always came to the point they actually didn't try, but they kind of thought that there would be this and that obstacle. And, they were like anticipating what could be problems. And most of the time, what we then agreed on was, well, simply start. Start running, start with your idea, start approaching people, make a plan how you want to overcome these potential obstacles that are not always there. And in most of the situations, the obstacles never came. Because the minute you start thinking about, and I'm coming back to what I said in the beginning, if you want to achieve something, you have to think forward. It also has to do again with change of perspectives. And once you do that, you start understanding, okay, what's the way that I need to go? Who do I need? Who might be against what I'm doing? How can I convince the people that could stand in the way? And the minute you start thinking about that minute you start to developing strategies, how to overcome obstacles if there are any in your way. But the minute you think about it, you already start to kind of decrease the number of obstacles because you understand it in the right or in the first place, and you're not like kind of running straight into the first one because you didn't think about it. So that's basically for me a strategy that always works quite well, that you maybe think twice before you start, that you really think a little bit forward, that you take the different perspectives of the people or whoever you need in such ways, and then simply start. And if you then get to an obstacle, it's the same story there. I think the last thing that should happen is that you kind of get this, or that you start your or that your enthusiasm stops, or that you get discouraged, by saying, okay, well, I'm not getting any further. I mean, then it's time for plan B, and then you need to kind of think how you overcome that obstacle. And that's very important. And if you consider these two strategies, firstly analyze the way and identify maybe the obstacles that could be there. And secondly, when you really get to an obstacle, don't get discouraged, but work on plan B, how to overcome it. I think it's working in most of the cases. And most important, never give up. It's now in my function as a social entrepreneur. I always from the beginning wanted to get support from an agency to make me a campaign, to get heard, because it's important. If I build awareness, I'm only one person, so I wanted to make a big campaign. And it took me 2 years. There were, I don't know how many agencies who promised me support, which they never delivered. But I wanted it. I knew it was important and I was fighting for it. And last week we had one of this, we have a campaign now, and it was in one of the most important newspapers of Germany for free. I didn't pay for it. And it took me 2 years and I never gave up. And there were many, many obstacles, many, many challenges, but I knew it was right, and I simply kept on pushing. And of course, there's periods where you're so close to giving up, and say, "Come on, I don't want anymore." But at the end of the day, it pays off if you really stick to what you want. And as I said, don't get discouraged.
Thank you, sir. I have one last question for you, which is our organization, School of Entrepreneurship Development, is working to create an entrepreneurial drive into the youth. So, do you have any advice for someone who is trying to become an entrepreneur?
Who is trying to become entrepreneur?
Yes.
Basically, most important is you should never get an entrepreneur because you want to be an entrepreneur. That's for me the most important, because I know many people who say, "Oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. It sounds so cool, and I'm CEO." And then you start searching what you could do. I wouldn't do that. I would come from. I have a good idea, and I think that's an idea worth following up on. I think important is that if you have such an idea, do your work before you start whatever, building up a company. Do research, make all these classical things. Who's your target group? Where you get the money from? I mean, that's the most important. Is anybody paying for that? How could such a kind of cash flow scenario look like? Do I have any competition? Is it about being faster than others, or do I have an idea that I need to protect, and stuff like that? And if you're really doing like kind of this preparation work properly, I think there's only one recommendation that I can give: just do it. And and then you'll find out if reality is really the same, or your dream, your vision, your planning equals then what's happening in reality. Because my experience as well is that even when you're getting entrepreneur, it's at least two phases you're running through. The first year is almost easy, because you're highly motivated. You come hopefully with a plan, so you know what you're doing, how to set up things. Things start moving. But then you're getting into the point where you have to scale and where you have to grow, and where things are getting a little bit more tricky. And I think many companies fail after the first year. So also keeping that in mind, not only ambitious start with a great idea, but also a plan how things can work out over a longer period of time, and then do it. So good preparation, and simply having the energy and being brave enough to start should be enough. And if you're convinced of what you're doing, that's most important. If you just want to be entrepreneur, do something else.
Thank you so much, sir, for taking the time to speak with me today. I appreciate your insights and experience. And this is the very end of this session. I would like to thank you again for giving your precious time to us. And thanks, viewer. I hope they found this session as informative as I have. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot for the invitation. All the best to you, and good luck for the future to everybody. Be brave. Bye-bye.